Hello and welcome to Traditional Painting the Digital Way. This is where I use digital painting apps to teach traditional painting techniques. This is part 2 of Cutie Boots in a Pumpkin, and this is also for Inktober week 1. And if you want to learn more about the materials that you use for Inktober, all the traditional materials and what Inktober is, check out part 1 in this series. The app that I'm going to be using is ArtRage for Android, and we're going to continue working on the pumpkin, and we're also going to start working on the kitten. So here I'm just refining the shapes of the pumpkin a little bit and adding in a little bit of a darker orange color, and then I'm trying to go ahead and blend everything together here, and I'm collapsing the layers so that the painting won't be quite so laggy when I'm using the ArtRage program, because the more layers it has, the laggier it can become. So we want it to be as stable as possible. And I'm using the low blending brush here and trying to get a little bit of a better shape on this pumpkin on the side. And I'm using an orange color, but I like to add a little bit of yellows to it and some browns. And as I've said, it depends on what kind of watercolor brand you are as to what the color names are. It'll be some kind of orange and to some kind of yellow, and you can use all different kinds of watercolors if you're following along traditionally. And then I'm just working a little bit more on refining this pumpkin over here. And as I've explained before in part 1, the brushes in ArtRage for Android can't get very big because stability issues and the speed of the processors on the Android tablets just can't handle really big brushes. So you have to work with pretty small brushes when you use ArtRage for Android. And so I'm just kind of refining the shapes on the pumpkin a little bit better, throwing in some more yellow, just trying to get that highlight color that comes out of the pumpkin, because they're not solid orange, so you want variations of color in the pumpkin, and that kind of gives it a three-dimensional look. And so I'm just kind of working on that and blending it in, trying to get it to look like traditional watercolor using this app. And so you have to put down a stroke and then blend it in, and then put down some more strokes and then blend them in, and that will give you your watercolor look. And then of course save frequently, because this app does crash occasionally and you lose your work. And so I'm trying to work on the inside of the pumpkin again, just making it a little bit darker, trying to give it a little bit of a shadow look. And then here I'm adding in my kitten Cutie boots. And I'm using kind of a light purplish color. We just want that for kind of a shadow color, as we don't want pure white. And you can probably use, if the watercolor that you're using isn't opaque enough, you can use gouache if you're following along traditionally with traditional paints. You can use gouache, or you can actually use acrylic really thin, and you can still get the watercolor look, but you get a little bit more of an opaqueness. And so I'm using kind of a dark blue, dark grayish, and dark brown just to do the darker parts of his fur here. And as I keep saying throughout this whole series, I wish I had drawn the picture a little bit better at the beginning, and this would have helped in this part right here. This is where I really needed to actually draw the picture out with pencil first and then go back over it, especially if you're using traditional watercolor, because you can't really do layers with traditional watercolors. So you definitely kind of want to draw this out in detail first. And so what I'm doing here is just kind of going back over and trying to get the watercolor look with the blender. And I went back over the eyes because I didn't like the way that was. And you can paint over a darker paint if you're just using traditional watercolors too. But if you want to put the eyes back in, you probably are going to need a gouache maybe, or acrylic or something like that. And so I just went ahead and added them back in and corrected the shape a little bit better. And I just keep working on the shape of the eyes and his features, trying to get the shape of his head just right, adding a little bit more gray on the sides, and I'm trying to keep it rough edges here because he's got lots of fluffy hair, so we kind of want to show that. And then I erased it out a little bit and added some more hay there. If you're following along traditionally, you make a mistake like this, you can either try to lift out the background color, and you can do that if you just put down the color. You can kind of lift it out quickly with a Kleenex or a sponge or something, and then add in the regular color that you want. But you have to be really careful about that. So sometimes you may have to go and use your gouache paint along with this because it's a lot thicker and more opaque. So I worked a little bit on the hay there, and then I'm refining the eyes of the jack-o'-lantern once again. And I'm using a dark brown color for it. And then I'm trying to get the mouth just right. Make a few teeth. That always makes the mouth of the jack-o'-lantern look interesting. And you can do any kind of design that you want for your jack-o'-lantern. It doesn't matter. I just thought I'd make a traditional looking jack-o'-lantern. But there's all different kinds. You can make scary ones, and you can make happy ones, or you can do a different kind of design altogether. I just found some references on Pixabay where they have royalty-free photos that you can use, and so I was just kind of using those as a model for the jack-o'-lanterns in this painting. And I'm going back and just kind of refining the features a little, and then blending them in again, just trying to get that watercolor look. And here I'm just trying to get sort of the basic painting painted in with a watercolor look, and then I want to go back later with the ink, and then I'll add in more details, hopefully with the ink pen. So I'm trying to go ahead and get the hay going a little bit and blending, just kind of blending everything in right quick before I try to do a little bit of the inking. So I'm going back and blending some of the strokes in on the hay there, just trying to get some colors that you can see in the photo reference. And then hopefully, this is what I always think when I do this, hopefully I'll be able to pull everything together with the ink. And I probably wouldn't recommend this approach. Like I said, just try to make a complete drawing first, and it's a lot easier. Then you don't have to worry about trying to pull everything together with the ink at the end. So I'm using the technical pen to try to get the texture of the hay, and you make a whole bunch of rough strokes with the pen, and I'm using kind of a dark brown color to show up against the basis of the watercolor that I've put in for the painting. And so you just kind of make rough, jagged strokes here, and I'm trying to get sort of the size that I want here for the pen nib. And if you're following along traditionally, you would use your pens with colored inks and whatever kind of brand that you want. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of colored inks out there, and if you go with Sakura, you can get different colors, and they're usually waterproof. If you go with Staedtler and some of those others, they're not. So you would definitely want to put the ink on last after you're through doing the watercolor, because otherwise it will run. So I'm just kind of working all the way around on the hay bales, just trying to get kind of a texture and make it look like there's a big pile of hay behind the kitten and the pumpkins. And I'm adding some yellows and some really light, almost white color. And you can do this with gel pens. They work pretty well, or you can use Posca pens. Anyway, this is the end of part 2 of Cutie Boots in a Pumpkin. And in part 3, we'll finish working on the hay, and we'll also start adding the inking details to the cat and the pumpkin, and also start working on the grass. So thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much for your support. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments down below, and I will catch you later